Okay, well, here we are. We are back in week 9. We have just a few more weeks to go. So we have week 9. Tonight we're going to do 17 and 18. Then we'll do 19 and 20 together next week. And then we take a week off because that's the week of Thanksgiving. So you're not allowed to come here on Thanksgiving. I will not have turkey for you in the building. And then we will be back here the following Thursday, and then and we'll do chapter 21, and then chapter 22, which is the last chapter in the book of Revelation, we will do the first Thursday in December. And then we all get to go and enjoy the holidays. Are we on the slides?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. Good. Do you want to start us in prayer
Sure.
once you get all settled here?
So I have both been looking forward to and had some anxiety about these chapters because there's going to be some difficult things that we discuss in these. Previous chapters, there was some ooginess going on. There was a lot of death and destruction, and that's difficult. But these two chapters are some of the most challenging for Christians and for Westerners, and we are Christians in the West. So this is a doubly difficult message for us, and there are truths that we need to hear. So as we pray, I would like to keep that in mind. I'm going to pray for that tonight. And as we head into this evening, I would just encourage you and implore you and beseech you to hear this with an open heart. Where you need conviction, be convicted. Do not feel condemnation, because that is a lie of the enemy and not what you need to hear. But this is going to be a tough message tonight. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm scared witless. So, dear Heavenly Father, Lord, again, as we come before you, it is such a blessing to be able to gather together freely and study your word. We pray for your wisdom. We pray for your discernment. We pray for your conviction. Lord, as we grow in our faith and we grow closer to you, we recognize your conviction as an opportunity for us to grow in our Christ-likeness and grow in our faith and grow in our relationship with you. And even though it can be uncomfortable and it can be a little disconcerting and maybe I even dare say a little bit scary, we pray that you would help us to see those opportunities for growth for what they are. They are your will for us and your wish for us to gain that which is the most important and the most good for us. And we just pray that your Holy Spirit would just fill this space and this time and help our hearts to be able to hear your message and help us to embrace your truth. And we lift all this up in the name of your holy, precious Son, who is our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Is there anything you want to say before we get started?
I just did.
Okay. He's prepped you right now, and you haven't run for the door, so we're good. Okay. You want to go to the next slide? Here we are. We're still in these final events. We've been in final events leading up to the return of Christ for his rule and his reign, and I feel like I've said that because I have for about the last 4 weeks. We are in the last of the most difficult chapters in Revelation, and where God's judgment is coming to the evil religious systems and the political systems, the economic systems of the end times. The destruction of the economic and political system that was set up by the beast, the Antichrist, is going to crumble, is going to be judged. And God is going to essentially start destroying sin in the world. So with that, let's open it up, and we are going to start with Revelation 17 in verses 1 through 6. It says, "One of the 7 angels who had poured out the 7 bowls came over and spoke to me. Come with me, he said, and I will show you the judgment that is going to come on the great prostitute who rules over many waters. And remember, he's coming to John, right? And he's telling John, come with me. The kings of the world have committed adultery with her, and the people who belong to this world have been made drunk by the wine of her immorality. So the angel took me in the spirit into the wilderness. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that had 7 heads and 10 horns, and we've seen this beast before, and blasphemies against God were written all over it. The woman wore purple and scarlet clothing and beautiful jewelry made of gold and precious gems and pearls. In her hand she held a gold goblet full of obscenities and the impurities of her immorality. A mysterious name was written on her forehead, Babylon the Great, mother of all prostitutes and obscenities in the world. I could see that she was drunk with the blood of God's holy people who were witnesses for Jesus, and I stared at her in complete amazement. That is not a pretty picture. It is not a pretty picture. See, John is invited to witness the future destruction of the city of Babylon.
Okay, but before
we get into that,
need to explain what's going on with Babylon in chapter 17 and Babylon in chapter 18, and kind of the bigger picture of what's going on here, okay? Because there's a Babylon in chapter 17, and there's a Babylon in chapter 18. Are they the same Babylon? Maybe, maybe not, okay? And it's actually not as important. We're going to talk about the mystery and the identification of the Babylons. We're going to, and so it's less important which Babylon this is and what modern kingdoms they are. That's less important. What's more important is that chapter 17 and chapter 18 represent the destruction and unmaking, but also the aftermath and the consequences of Satan's 2 greatest plagues. Chapter 17, the whore of Babylon, is the plague of Satan's false religions, fake religion, lies in religion, and everyone who is taken in by them, and the consequences thereof. Chapter 18 is the lie of Satan's, or the plague of Satan's materialism. Satan wants to derail believers. Satan wants to take as many souls with him into banishment as he can. Maybe it's the hope that he doesn't want to be alone for eternity, even though that he knows that's what it's going to be. I don't know. I don't know why, but that's his goal. And so he's got 2 great plans. He's got 2 great tricks. Those who follow false religion, and if you're not religious, you tend to be materialistic. So those who get sucked in by materialism. Either way, he doesn't care which one you choose, which one people choose, as long as he can use one or the other or both to derail you from saving faith. That's the goal. So in these chapters, chapter 17 and chapter 18, we see God shine the light on and reveal and characterize these lies, and then speak truth over them, expose why they're false and why they are fake, and then destroy them. All right? It's a 3-step process. And it's going to be convicting. It's going to be convicting. I'm going to wait till we get there before we get into why. But just keep that in mind. Chapter 17 is religion and the lies of false religion. And chapter 18 is materialism and the pitfalls of materialism. Okay, everybody got that? Okay, now, because none of this makes sense unless you look at it and go, why? What does this represent? What is the symbology here? Like, we're going to get into a bunch of the symbolism and the explanation. All that stuff is cool and elucidating and helps you understand. But you really need that larger framework of what's chapter 17? What's chapter 17? False religion. Okay, and what's chapter 18? Materialism. So once we get into the explanations, it's going to be like, check. Okay, now I get it, right? But you need that larger picture. both of which are the lies of Satan. These are Satan's two greatest plagues to collect as many souls as he can. Okay? All right.
The teacher just came out in that one. For those of you who don't know, he has been a teacher in different areas and places. So capacities.
You know what's missing?
What's that?
The whiteboard.
Yes. You
Tony, can I have a whiteboard?
You do love yourself a whiteboard. Okay, so let's dig into this a little bit. Because as I said, John is invited to witness the destruction of Babylon the Great, right? And what this is representing is that things have become so morally destitute. There is no morality left in the world. And it's depicted in this particular instance by the symbol of some versions will say a harlot, and some versions will say a prostitute, or some versions say the whore of Babylon. Here's the thing. We're drawing back a parallel to the Old Testament, and we've talked about that a lot. And here's what the prostitute means in the Old Testament. It means unfaithfulness to God. So Israel, God's chosen people, is often called on by prophets and that they are prostituting themselves because they are unfaithful to God. Why? Because we are sinful humanity, but they're God's chosen people, and so he continues to go after them and remind them that he is the one true God and that their purpose and their place is to be in his glory and worshiping him. Okay, so this is a metaphor. So the prostitute is not actually a person, which is interesting because we've had lots of different metaphors and things about actual people, right? We had the Antichrist, we have the false prophet. Those are actual people, right? In this case, we have the picture of a person, but it's not a person, which is part of the reason that this makes Revelation so confusing, right?
However, it's the second woman that we see in Revelation. And the previous woman that we saw in Revelation was also not a single person. Who was the previous woman that we saw? It was the pregnant woman who gave birth to the son, who then the beast was waiting for it to be born, to be devoured, but it's God's spirit. So what was the woman? Israel. It was God's chosen people, right? So the previous woman was a metaphor, and this woman is also similarly a metaphor. So the other ones, literal people. Who are they? God only knows at this point, right? But this one, the woman, this is not a single person. This is representative of a collection of religions or a church. It's a false church.
So she's sitting on the waters. That's the picture that we have here. And although the historic, so there are some people who try to get into, is it actually Babylon? Because there's some historic relevance to sitting on the waters. Babylon was on the waters, but that's really not the meaning here. And actually, if we go a little bit further into the chapter, we find out that the water represents people. Multitudes and multitudes of people. And what we're going to learn is that these are the nations, the peoples, the groups who are unfaithful to God. And I want to be clear here because we can all be unfaithful to God. We are all sinful humanity, so we all fall victim and are unfaithful to God. That's not what we're talking about here, though there is something that we need to pull from this in terms of being convicted, in terms of being willing to take a hard look at our own lives and our choices, right? But in this particular instance, we're talking about the people who have been influenced by false religion. Remember, there's a lot of false religion that's going on right now. We've had the false prophet. And these are the people who have celebrated when the two witnesses have been killed, like they're throwing a party, right? And so these are the people who have become drunk on immorality. Her sitting above these people, so her being the unfaithfulness to God, the false religions, that worldliness, that anti-God, right? She's sitting on top of the water, meaning she does have some control here. And she has control over religious and political powers. So God is never one, I love this about God, he's never one to not identify why or call out the sin of what's being judged. And he does that, very true to his nature here, by having the angel explain to John what her sins are. He doesn't just say she's going to be punished. He said, look, this is who she is. This is what she's done. And he calls it out very, even though it's prophetic and it's apocalyptic and all of that, he calls it out very specifically. He says that her sin is sexual morality. Does it actually, sexual immorality. Does it mean sexual immorality? Well, no, because the prostitute is not a person, right? So it's not about sexual immorality, but it's still making that parallel, making that metaphor. The metaphor, the prostitute, is unfaithfulness to God. That means the sexual morality is also a metaphor for idolatry, meaning they have violated the standards of righteousness and justice to gain political and economic favor. They have placed commerce and politics above God. And at this point, the text seems to indicate that the whole world is aligned with the spirit of decadence and idolatry, and there's both a commercial and false religion connotation here. So remember, we're looking at these two different places, these two different women, but they represent false religion and materialism, right, between 17 and 18. Do you want to add anything to that? Okay. So moving on to, then we take now we've gone from the woman, the prostitute, over the waters to the woman over the scarlet beast, who's riding the scarlet beast, right? And she is pictured here in the wilderness. So the angel takes John, and takes him to where he can see the harlot sitting on a beast with 7 heads. The scarlet beast being the Antichrist. And because the Antichrist will carry godlessness across the world, so he's carrying her. Although the beast will have military and economic power, the prostitute, meaning the influence of Satan, will have a strong influence. And the materialism, we're starting to get a little bit of a glimpse of it here in the way that she's described. Because she's described as being clothed in scarlet and purple clothes. Those 2 colors would have been the most expensive colors. We don't think about that today, actually. I mean, I'm wearing a bright pink. You've got purple on. You know, somebody back there has tan. Somebody has some red in there. Ray's got a red shirt underneath. We don't think a lot of it. But the depiction here, and the reason that those colors are called out, is because it is a metaphor for the wealth. It is indicative of the wealth. And these colors were often reserved for great leaders and kings. And then you see that she's piled with gold and jewels and pearls. And this indicates 2 things. And I want to be really clear here, because there are 2 pieces to this. One is that this is an attachment to materialism in this world. And it's also being weighed down by those material possessions. And then perversion is depicted as the disgusting and detestable content. So she has this gold, beautiful, pure gold cup. And it's defiled. It looks really good on the outside. But when John takes a look at it, it is full of detestable, gross, disgusting contents. And I really want to call attention to this, because this is often how Satan deceives us. He puts a really pretty package on a really ugly thing. And he leads us to believe that that really pretty package is not full of things that will tear us away from God. It's not full of things that leave us disgusted So we really need to be careful that we're not falling into that particular trap. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Not yet.
He's just saving it up for you guys. You don't get a whiteboard, Chris. I mean, his knee is going like we are sitting here in anticipation. Okay, let's go to the next one then. Everybody's staring at you now. Okay, during the time when John's seeing this vision, I actually wanted to call attention to this because there's this golden headband that she's wearing, and it has the mysterious name on it, all of that. This was actually a common practice during the time when John.
In the great parts of art. I don't know if you guys can
Yeah,
see that. But she's wearing, it's tucked under her hair, but she's got
it's a
this
gold headband.
And if we go back to this one, it's sort of like a crown. What's it actually going to look like? God only knows. It may be a metaphor, but
Yeah, but the picture here is one that John would have recognized because this is something he would have seen in the world. Because at this time in Rome, prostitutes in Rome would wear a gold headband with their name across it so they could be identified easily. They could be called upon. It was a naming convention. It set them apart. So it makes sense that the prostitute in this vision mirrors what was known by the first century church. This gold headband with a name on it, they would have recognized this and connected to that symbolism. And then the word mysterious or mystery here is not a, it means that the name has not been revealed yet. It's not that it's a mysterious thing, but there's a mystery that has not been revealed. The Antichrist's kingdom of ungodliness will extend beyond mere secularism and worldliness, and it will extend, and we've talked about this, to the active persecution of Christians to the point of death. And the woman is said to be drunk with the blood of the saints. Drunk with the blood of the saints and the martyrs and the witnesses to Jesus. The persecution and immorality are so overwhelming that John was astonished.
Okay. So now before we move on and start getting into the 5s and 7s and 10s and all the different numbers and what they might mean, we need to highlight the concept of the mystery, right? So the spiritual mystery, because spiritual Babylon's true identity is yet to be revealed. So we're talking about the identity of those false religions. So what are some false religions? Audience participation. What are some false religions? Sean?
I would say in general, very broadly, anything that says that Jesus is not God and Lord didn't rise from the dead.
Okay.
I mean,
Good.
it's
That's a huge basket. That's a huge catch-all. Anything that doesn't say.
I would say specifically, I mean, a lot of say Jesus is God in the way that we're all gods, but Jesus is God above us.
Okay. So, false religion. I was looking for specifics. That's a wonderful definition, and I kind of want to come back to that after we've built up to it a little bit. So how about anything that just doesn't mention Jesus? So, what? Hinduism, Buddhism, okay. Zoroastrianism, which is a very old... Alcoholism? I'm not quite sure where to go with that one. Let's put a pin in that one. Maybe we have some time at the end of the evening. Okay? So what about religions that do mention Jesus? What are religions that mention Jesus? Mormonism. Okay, Mormonism, Jehovah's Witness. Did you guys know that Jesus is recognized in Islam? They know him as Injil, right? Okay, Sean?
Well, that's why I specifically said that
Okay.
those who don't say that Jesus is God and that he rose from the dead, they all mention Jesus, but they don't say.
You went right for the punchline. You went right for the throat. I wanted to build up to get there. So any religion that does not, recognize that Jesus died and was risen from the dead, and in that act secured our salvation, right? I mean, that's the punchline that sets Christianity apart.
And that he's God.
And that he is God.
And that he is also
okay,
God.
and that he's God. It's good.
Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons also say that he
Okay.
died and rose again, but they don't. They say that he's God, but they say that he's God in a way that he is God like next to us, like we're all spiritual.
Okay. So where are we going with this? How do you kill rats? Poison. Okay. How do you poison a rat? Feed it what? Okay. Rat poison is like 99.92% rat food and 0.04% rat poison. It's a little bit of insidiousness wrapped in what would otherwise seem to be goodness. Okay? So we've said false religion has been at work since the time of Babel. Long time. Okay? Satan has been working in the world to whisper to people, give them options about salvation. How does you go ask a Hindu, you go ask a Muslim, you go ask a Buddhist, how do you get saved? You know, each one has their own answer. You know, reincarnation, working out your karma. You know, try to be a good person. 5 pillars. You know, they all have their own paths, right? And Satan will whisper those and let people identify with those because there's things that ring true to people's experience depending on where they're from. And he lets people follow those to hell.
Prosperity.
Okay? Prosperity gospel. Okay, we can keep going on the specific examples. But when we start to talk about Mormonism, Mormons have Jesus. We start talking about the Jehovah's Witness. Jehovah's the name of God. They have a Jesus, right? So are those false religions? Absolutely. But they hit a little closer to home because they have things that we recognize in them. What do they have? They have a little bit of truth. They might have a lot of truth. But they have something that leads people off the straight and narrow path. What are the other examples? Okay, now this is why I was scared to bring this up. I can see you watching me. This is why I was scared to bring this up. And please hear me in this, because we are going to name some names and talk about some identities that are in some of our pasts. And I think that it is important that we work these things out in a space like this. And we understand where we came from and where we're going to. Okay? Is there truth and mistaken doctrine in some of the modern Christian denominations?
Yes.
Absolutely. And we have to have the courage to be able to dig in and be like the Bereans and judge those doctrines against the Bible. All right? So, what are some of the examples? This is why I want to talk about this, right? When we talk about this false church that is represented by the harlot of Babylon, is that church going to be, who's going to make that church, right? The Antichrist is going to make that church. The Antichrist is going to rule over that church. Who's going to be in that church? People who are not in the rapture, people who, are not believers, right? And what is that church going to be made of? Islam? Absolutely. Buddhism? Sure. Hinduism? Undoubtedly. Mormonism? Yeah, Are there going to be Presbyterians, Catholics, Methodists, evangelicals?
Non-denominationals.
Well, I can't remember who the quote was from, but yes, there was a quote that was talking about churches after the rapture that are going to meet the Sunday after the rapture and will not be missing a member. Will most of them be Mormon? Probably. I don't know. Okay. So what are some of those false doctrines and where do they come from? Okay. Where most of the modern ones, based on my research, where most of the modern ones come from, is that you can draw these conclusions based on biblical truths. And that's okay. You draw a conclusion. And then you get a second conclusion. So that's good biblical interpretation. And then you take these two conclusions and extrapolate further. It may or may not be true, but it's not directly based on biblical scriptures. And you're on shaky sand. You're on a shaky foundation. Okay? So what's an example? Let's dig into some specific examples. And please hear me. I do not mean disrespect in this. okay? My goal is to actually uncover some of these truths so that we can examine our hearts and make sure that we are reading the scriptures and that we are working out our salvation and growing in relationship. Why? Because religion is a belief system. Salvation is a relationship. So the relationship with Jesus is salvation. And so if you're looking to any religion and putting your faith in that religion, it's a misstep. Now, are there saved people in these religions? Absolutely. I'm certain that there are people who are saved in Catholicism. There are absolutely people who are saved in each of the denominations. But how many of them have put their faith in something that was not grounded biblically? Let's talk about some examples. What were you going to say?
No, you
Okay.
actually went there for the most part. But what I want us to remember, and what I really want you to hear, is that this is not a dig on any denomination or other religion. We are all imperfect people who imperfectly read the Bible. Okay? And I want us to make sure that we recognize that. And the point that we're getting to with all of this is that no matter what it is, view it in light of Scripture. View it in light of Scripture. If it doesn't align with Scripture, then it's not aligning with God's Word. We have to examine everything.
Yep.
One of the things that I studied and read just not too long ago is that Satan couldn't squash Christianity, so instead he says, let's corrupt it.
That's it. Satan couldn't crush Christianity, so he was trying to work to corrupt it. Yes. I'm saying that for the recording because they can't hear you.
Kind of where I'm getting
Yes.
at is that through the religions it has been, Satan's finger's been through and touched a lot of these corrupt
Where his goal,
basic Christianity.
yes, so where his goal is to stick his finger in and poke, right, to just knock people off the path just a little bit. And as soon as they're off the path, he's happy, they're good. And he's just going to let them keep going down that path. Okay, so the very early church. So what was one of the major issues that the very early church, so we're talking even like pre-Roman Catholicism, like this is a very early church in the Middle East and in the surrounding area of Jerusalem and early Rome. What was their issue? They put way too much significance in baptism, right? If you were baptized, you were saved. Right? We deal with that. We talk about that. When we talk about baptism and invite people up to Tahoe, we say, baptism does not secure your salvation. This is something that we do as an outward expression to the world about an inner change, right? But it is something that we honor and that we partake in order to express the celebration of our faith, right? That is a biblical, healthy perspective on salvation. Whereas the early church, remember, who were they? Most of them were Jews, right? So that how did Jews show their faith? One of the major ways was through circumcision. So it was a physical change or a physical experience of the body for circumcision. And based on that experience, it made sense to them. Well, we're going to do a new physical experience. It's like reborn, rebirth, Jesus' baptism. He was, John the Baptist. So we get baptized, and now, boom, our salvation is secured. I'm baptized, right? Wrong. Salvation does not, baptism does not secure salvation, right? It is instead a relationship with the saving God of the universe, Jesus Christ, okay? All right, let's go a little bit further. We're going to talk about the progression. We're going to go through a little bit of history of church history and talk about the progression. So now we get into Roman Catholicism, right? So what was the issue with Roman Catholicism? Okay, there's a lot of issues with Roman Catholicism, but what was one of their major ones? It was that membership and attendance in the church secured your salvation, okay? That you had to be a member of the church. You're a member, you show up, you get yourself counted among the saved, right? Is that right? Is that attendance? No. It is about relationship with the saving God of the universe, Jesus Christ. It's relationship, it's not attendance.
But we have to remember, why did they do that? Because attendance was the only way that they could get people in to hear about the word of Christ. okay?
So there's
So there's
a reason
there's
for
some intention there that seems like it aligns with
Right.
God. But it's a human intention that didn't put the focus where it needed to be, which was on relationship with Christ.
Denise?
So with Catholicism, don't we also have that they were going to confession, and it was the priest that was determining whether or not they were forgiven for whatever sin they
Yeah.
committed that day, and that and almost a worship of the Mother Mary.
Definitely a worship of the Mother Mary.
So-
Deification of the Mother Mary.
And
which
let's
is an
take
issue.
that, confession, right? In the Bible, it tells us to confess your sins to God and another person.
So there's a piece of truth.
So
there.
there is truth to that. But it took the focus off where the focus needs to be.
Which is God. And it was also based on their context, where you were going through an intermediary, right? You had someone who was intercessing on your behalf and going to God for you. That was the Jewish model. It was the priest who went to God for you, right? So there was a lot of familiarity in that.
That goes back to the priest in the tabernacle who was
yes.
giving sacrifices and
On your
and
behalf.
on your behalf, on the behalf of the people. So it's a model that they understood and applied in a way that didn't put the focus
Where it
where it
belonged.
was supposed to be.
Okay? Yes.
The infallibility of the Pope.
So, we could spend a long time talking about Catholicism, so we're going to move on because there's a lot there, and we could talk about a lot of the reasons that I could never be a Catholic, and it's and it is fascinating and interesting, and what's really interesting is when you get into the why and where all those things came from, you're like, oh, that makes sense, and now I see why it's wrong. So anyway, okay.
But here's what I want to point out with that as well, is there are people who are absolutely saved. We need to remember
Yes.
that there are two different things that we need to look at. There is the truth of salvation. Where does salvation come from? Jesus. It is accepting Jesus as Lord and Savior, declaring it with your mouth, and there's evidence of a transformed life in that, right? That is what I would call the closed fist, right? That, if they don't say that, they are not aligned with Christ. They're not aligned with Christianity or with God's salvation for the world. Then there are things that come down to interpretation. And the damage that gets done, as Christopher alluded to, is that in that interpretation, people can get so wrapped up in the interpretation
And specifics.
and the specifics, the rituals, the whatever it is, that they put their faith in those things. We need to make sure that we're keeping that clear in our hearts.
Okay, a couple more examples, because I want to give these illustrations, and then we'll move on, okay? Protestantism, right? Protestantism, Calvinism, Lutheranism, went to try to address a number of recognized issues in the Catholic Church, and where was one of their major missteps in confusing truth with putting their faith in something that wasn't biblically supported. Well, whereas the Catholics, where it was individual membership in the church, for a lot of Protestant religions, the parents can baptize the baby and get them in, and then that child, having been brought up in the church, only needs to go through confirmation, and then they're in the church. So the parents can prime the salvation for the child, right, and get them in. So how many people are there in modern Protestant religions who have gone through the motions and gone through confirmation, but do they really have an individual saving faith with Jesus Christ, the Lord of the universe? That is a troubling question that I think that a lot of us have to wrestle with. And does that relationship and that background and that foundation lead people to salvation? What do we know from Scripture? Teach a child well, and even though they may part, they will return to the ways in which they were brought up. So have a lot of people, myself included, veered from the path, but you come back to your roots and then you wind up in a saving relationship with Jesus. Sure, But how many are out there going, yeah, I went to confirmation and I'm good. And then they go out and carouse and drink and sleep around and gamble and kill and who else knows what. But they're like, no, I'm good. I was confirmed.
That was
I
my
have
checkbox.
secured my salvation. Check the box. Okay? That's what we're talking about. Checking the boxes as opposed to saving relationship. Religion is that faith in something rather than relationship with God, right? Evangelicals. Wait, aren't we evangelicals?
Why, yes, we are.
What do evangelicals get wrong? What's the box that we can check that isn't necessarily all the way there? Pray the prayer. Make a decision. Make a choice. Now, is it absolutely true that no one, not even Satan, can steal you from the palm of God? Absolutely. But does it take more than just praying the prayer? What's the evidence of salvation? A changed life, a changed heart. It's that heart transplant, that your old, dead heart is removed and replaced by God for a heart that's what? On fire for Jesus, right? There's evidence. So are there people who can say the words and decide, yeah, that sounds good. I believe that. That sounds good. You know, there's some things I like in the Sound of Mormonism too. There's people out there who are like, yeah, check the box. You know, pray the prayer. But if it's not sincere, are they really saved? God only knows. God only knows. All right, and then the last one, which is really sort of the most modern movement, is the charismatics. Charismatics. What's the checkbox for the charismatics? It's continued revelation through prophecy, and what is it? The coming on of the Spirit, right? You know, some kind of evidence of the Spirit. If you're saved, then you're going to be slain in the Spirit, or talking in the tongues, or you're going to have ecstatic utterances, or, you know, and if you don't have those, then the whole Spirit's not moving in you, right? And so how many people are babbling and talking and falling down and overcome by the Spirit? And is that really a relationship with Jesus? Maybe. There are absolutely saved Christ-following believers in each of these churches, but it's not by being in the religion. It's because of relationship with Jesus. So that's the take. So I wanted to go through all of them because there are modern Catholics and there are modern Protestants and there are modern Lutherans and there are modern Charismatics and there are modern, evangelicals, and there are saved Christians in each of those churches. But the take-home, the real hard lesson is it is not about checking a box. Why? Because that's works. That is works. Each of those things is based on what you can do, right? You can attend church. You can be a member. You can be baptized. You can get your kids in, or your parents got you in. You can say the sinner's prayer. You can talk in tongues. This isn't about you. This is about relationship with Jesus. That is salvation. And that's the difference with this false church of the whore of Babylon. So she is going to rule over all the churches that are left on earth after the rapture. And it's going to be all of them. It's going to be all of them united. And that makes me shiver. That makes me shiver. And it makes me want to just preach that truth, that it's not about religion. It's about relationship.
Isn't that why we need to pray for ministers all over the world, because they are the ones that if they lead their people astray.
Yes. We should be praying for all of our leaders.
We need to know that it's a relationship.
Yep. And here's what I want to make sure we know. As a pastor, as a leader, I'm going to get something wrong. I don't intend to. I do my research. In doing this, I have 5 different resources that I'm looking at. But I'm still human. So please, please pray for the leaders of the churches. Pray that we would be empowered by the Spirit to seek out the truth, to do our research, to do our examination of Scripture, and to be convicted when we are wrong. and to be convicted when we're not even, maybe we're 10% wrong. But did that 10%, did something I say make somebody else veer from the path?
Somebody else stumble.
Make somebody else stumble. So please, pray for us as leaders.
Yeah. And I don't want to say no. I want to say yes and. Okay? Whose job is it to proclaim the gospel and shine the light of Jesus so that others can come to know him? It's every believer. It's not just the ministers. Why do we gather together in the church, right? What is Hebrews? Do not neglect, as is the custom of some, the gathering together of the saints for the purposes of what? Encouraging one another to good works, and thereby Christ is known. So you ask pastors, you ask preachers, whose job is it to preach to the unreached? The pastor is going to say the congregation. You ask the congregation, whose job is it to preach to the unreached? And they go, preacher. It was in the name. It was in the sentence. You just said it. Preach. Whose job is it? Preacher. That's their job. Preach. The preacher, I mean, who am I going to reach that's unreached? Who do I hang out with? I hang out with you guys, right? You know, you guys already know. But how do we reach the unreached? In our workplaces. Do I have a workplace full of unreached people? Sure, too. And I talk to them and I witness. But what can I really do? I can encourage each of you to get loud and get expressive with your relationship. Why did I say that word, expressive? Because the best way you can show the Bible is through your life to the people around you. Okay? But whose job is it? Is it mine? Yes. Is it just mine? No. Is it just Tony's? No. It's every one of us. So yes, we absolutely need to pray for our ministers that they are preaching the truth and the Bible and it unadulterated and uncorrupted and untainted with false or incorrect doctrine. Absolutely. But whose job is it to preach the gospel? Every follower of Christ. Every follower of Christ. Okay?
Can I add?
Yes, please.
I think one of the issues, especially when it comes to the deviation that we have in our pursuit of our relationship with Jesus, and this is one of the reasons why the Bible is so clear and why God hates pride. All of the things that we were talking about are different forms of pride. We think of pride being proud about something, but it isn't just that. The need for us to think like we need to do something in order to add to salvation is a form of pride. And it just, what Satan does is comes at us and thinking it cannot be
That simple.
so simple
Or easy.
that it was just Jesus dying on the cross and us accepting his death as an atonement for our death. It can't be that simple. There's got to be something else to it. I've got to be able to do something to add to, and therein comes pride. And that has been the downfall of so many religions over the years, is man stepping in with pride saying, we need to do this, or we need to add this, and so forth and so on. So that's what we have to all be very careful of. And even as we walk the walk as followers of Christ, there are times we go, well, I need to do this, or I should be that. Yes, if it's biblically directed that we do those things, but be careful that we don't start going down a path of our own making. So, for what that's worth.
Salvation not by works.
Yeah. And pride is an interesting sin because so many other sins are very outwardly demonstrated, and pride is very easily hidden, even hidden from ourselves. So what does that come down to? Examine your motivation. And once you've examined your motivation, ask God to examine your motivation. God is the one who sees the motives of our heart, right? Scripture tells us that.
And so there's two dangerous paths that you can take from that, okay? and both are equally false. One says, okay, well, then there's nothing that I can do that can jeopardize my salvation, so it doesn't matter what I do for the rest of my life, so I can do whatever I want, right? Paul speaks to this directly in the Bible, okay? Don't continue to sin because you know that your sins are covered by Christ. That is a false perspective. And then the other one, which is directly discussed by James, is that a true and saving faith has evidence in your life, right? People will be changed and transformed. And in the book of James, it's why we did the study of the book of James with the men's Bible study, is because there's that, we've talked about it in the past, antinomy, where you have two apparent things in contradiction to each other, and in resolving them biblically, you wind up having a huge truth of God. So James talks about, get active in your faith. If your faith doesn't have works, it's dead. And you're like, wait. But I thought we can't earn our way. I thought salvation by works is false doctrine. Yes, both. Well, wait, how is it both? Okay, I have a favorite metaphor of this. And some of you have heard this. If you have, don't give the punchline away. And if you haven't, it's very powerful, and I love this metaphor. You almost didn't make it here tonight. Some of you may have noticed that there's a big trailer out back parked behind the church. And I picked that trailer up and brought it here tonight because we're leaving directly here and headed to California. And on the way here, I got a flat tire on that trailer. I got this cool little tire pressure monitoring system that tells me when I get a flat tire so it doesn't do damage. And I got a flat tire, so I pulled over on the side of the highway, and I got out and I started changing the tire. But I forgot my wrench, and so I got up. And as I stood up into oncoming traffic, and there was a truck coming, and this 18-wheeler smacked into me and knocked me about 150 feet down the highway, and I was rolling and tumbling, but I got up, and I dusted myself off. You don't believe me? No. Why don't you believe me? So if an 18-wheeler hit me on the side of the highway and knocked me 150 feet down the road, there would be some physical evidence on me. There would be something that big and powerful and heavy hit me at speed, right? What makes you think that you can encounter the holy creator of the universe and come out of that experience without there being evidence in your life? That's what James is talking about when he says salvation without works is dead. If you're really saved, it's going to show up in your life. You're going to be on fire for what God cares about. That's the evidence. You're not working your way to salvation. You're working because you're saved. It leaves evidence. So, you don't get to keep sinning because grace covers all sin. Though true, that doesn't mean that we have the dispensation to keep sinning. And we're not earning our way to safe. The truth is that godly revelation that is met in the middle of those two things. Does that make sense? Okay. And that is what is missed by the whore of Babylon. That it's not about religion, it's about relationship.
Go, Chris.
Something I want to also point out here, because there is so much, before we get right back into this, there is so much that people say is hypocrisy, right? If you're supposed to be transformed, if you're supposed to be changed, and then you go out and drink away the night, right? If you go out and you
Gamble.
waste too much money. If you go out and have 16 pieces of chocolate cake, right? I know. There shouldn't be anything the matter with that. And I think in heaven, calories won't count. So here's the point, right? You see where Christopher's on fire, right? That didn't happen the day he was saved. It didn't even happen the next day. It was a progressive change. So when somebody has experienced salvation, don't judge them the next day if they're still in their own life and doing the things that they did yesterday. This is a progressive change. So yes, should they be on fire for Jesus? Absolutely. But if you don't see that on day 2, help them to see that Jesus is worth being on fire for.
And it's worth continuing and pursuing that relationship. It's about growing closer to Christ and each day growing more and more in his likeness. Will we ever get there? Will we ever be perfect? Not in this lifetime. You know, are there things that every pastor, every minister, every elder that you know struggles with? Absolutely. Okay? But the point is that they have invested and decided to systematically throughout their life progressively surrender more and more and more of their lives to God's will. And it's a process. It is absolutely a process to be worked out with fear and trembling in each person's heart.
As we grow in that, then we begin to see how that when we do fall back under those things, it affects others, and we don't want that to happen. So it helps us grow away from it.
Sure.
And you just said something key. When we slip and when we fall, the difference is when we see the consequence, it's us who no longer wants it. That's the evidence of God working in your heart. He changes what you want. Instead of wanting what you want in the world, you want what he wants. Why? Because it's holy, because it's his, because he wants what's best for us. And that process of conforming our desires and our lives and our priorities to what God prioritizes, it takes a while to get, the cravings for chocolate out of your system, okay? But eventually, okay, bad example. But that point, the word you said that is absolutely key is we no longer want. Actually, that's a bunch of words, but it's about the want. You want what he wants, right? God's priorities are our priorities. Okay, should we move on?
Okay.
Right.
17, 7, and 8. And we're going to do these just, a couple of verses and then do a little explanation and a couple verses. But we're going to move pretty quickly through the rest of this.
Okay. So 17:7. Why are you so amazed? The angel asked. I will tell you the mystery of this woman and the beast with the 7 heads and 10 horns on which she sits. The beast you saw was once alive but isn't now, and yet he will soon come up out of the bottomless pit and go to eternal destruction. And the people who belong to this world, whose names were not written in the book of life before the world was made, will be amazed at the reappearance of the beast who had died.
So this is actually bringing us back to something that happened previously in Revelation. And remember, we had talked about a couple of weeks ago that when the Antichrist comes, there's going to be this miraculous thing that happens. He receives a fatal wound, a fatal blow, and yet he comes back to life. So there is going to be a miraculous thing that happens, and people are going to connect to that. That's going to increase his following. The passage, however, adds a detail that chapter 13, which is where we find this vision, that part of the vision recorded. There's a detail in this one that is not included in chapter 13, but it's incredibly important. The Antichrist's ultimate end is destruction. However, along the way, non-believers or those whose names are not in the book of life, or some versions say the Lamb's book of life, will be astonished temporarily. And those who trust in Jesus will not be fooled. Okay, we're going to read 9 through 14. It says, this calls for a mind with understanding. The 7 heads of the beast represent the 7 hills where the woman rules. They also represent 7 kings. 5 kings have already fallen, the 6th now reigns, and the 7th is yet to come, but his reign will be brief. The scarlet beast that was, but is no longer, is the 8th king. He is like the other 7, and he too is headed for destruction. The 10 horns of the beast are 10 kings who have not yet risen to power. They will be appointed to their kingdoms for one brief moment to reign with the beast. They will all agree to give him their power and authority. Together they will go to war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will defeat them because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and his called and chosen and faithful ones will be with him. So there's a key to understanding this scene. John's description of the beast, the 7 heads and the 7 mountains and the 7 kings. And historically, there are some interpretations that say that this is Rome, because Rome is the city of 7 mountains or 7 hills. And it might seem like this is a reference to Roman rule, but it breaks down a little bit here upon examination. There's a much stronger explanation for the hills, that they stand for the 7 successive kingdoms ruled by Gentile leaders, and that there are 6 that have risen to this point when John is recording the vision: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. And of these, 5 have fallen. Rome still exists at this time. And the Antichrist's empire is yet to come. The Antichrist will be like other world rulers, similar to them in his character and his influence. And the 10 kings would be the rulers appointed by the beast, appointed by the Antichrist, who would use their influence to promote his agenda. And they all come together, and there becomes this alliance of all of these different nations, these different kings. They ally with the Antichrist and make war against the Lamb. But it was very clear. The Lamb, Jesus, conquers them. Why? Because he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And then 15 through 18.
Then the angel said to me, "The waters where the prostitute is ruling represent masses of people of every nation and language. The scarlet beast and his 10 horns all hate the prostitute." Wait, weren't they the ones supporting the prostitute? Mm-hmm. We're going to look there. "All hate the prostitute. They will strip her naked, eat her flesh, and burn her remains with fire. For God has put a plan into their minds, a plan that will carry out his purposes. They will agree to give their authority to the scarlet beast, and so the words of God will be fulfilled. And this woman you saw in your vision represents the great city that rules over the kings of the world."
So we talked about this, the waters, and I said a little bit later in that same chapter, we find out that the waters they symbolize the peoples, the multitudes, the nations, languages of the world, the majority of which are going to embrace self-centeredness and ungodliness. So what have we been talking about? That the focus needs to be on God, that the focus is on Jesus. And anytime we veer from that focus, we're focused on self. It's about me. It's about you. It's not about Christ. And then there's the image of the 10 nations or the 10 kings devouring the prostitute and burning her up with fire. And we just talked about this. Weren't they in alliance? Weren't they all together in all of this?
So why do they turn on her?
He did, actually, and he did it for his purposes. So what happens?
Sean?
Well, I'm just saying, I don't think it implies that they're good guys, it's something on God's side. Typically, that's just the nature of evil until you see, like, it's playing well in Star Wars, you know? That's why there only can be 2 Sith, you know?
Yep.
Have the power, one to crave it, you know?
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah. So what do we...
Like, you know, mafia families, you know, they would turn on each
Oh,
other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's that betrayal, right? So this is, we talked about how chapter 17 was Satan's lie of religion, right, and false religion. And what does God do, right? Those 3 steps where he shows that it is a lie, right? This is the unmasking. You know, this false religion, God goes, "Oh, by the way, it was false." How do you know? They're not treating each other like brothers and sisters in Christ. They're turning on each other. They're betraying each other. They're burning and killing and dismembering the leader. Why? Because it was all based in lie, based in evil. Yeah.
So God's going to use their selfishness, their selfish intent to execute judgment against idolatry. Verse 18 emphasizes this turning of the tables, and the lesson, I have to say, was no doubt a comfort to the early church. And here's what I want us to pull away from even this. God, who is always in control, God, who is always in sovereign control, would destroy the prostitute of idolatry, secularism, worldliness, false religion. God turns the wicked against each other, and he does it to accomplish his purposes. So we've seen this throughout the Old Testament and through the Bible, and even when Christ was crucified on a cross, he took their wicked intent, and in some cases it even says that God hardened their heart.
Good example is Pharaoh. Mm-hmm.
Did he harden the hearts of the Jewish people when they shouted, "Crucify him"? Absolutely. Why did he do it? Because it accomplished the purpose. It accomplished God's purpose of redemption. It accomplished God's purpose of salvation. So God, even through this, even through them turning on each other and waging war on each other and breaking with Babylon, breaking with the Antichrist and all of that, it's done specifically to accomplish God's purposes. And we need to hold that very, very much right in our forefront of our minds. Okay, we're going to do 1 through 8. Okay, so 1 through 3 is on this first page, and then 4 through 8. After all this I saw, so after all this John sees, another angel come down from heaven with great authority, and the earth grew bright with his splendor. He gave a mighty shout. Babylon is fallen, that great city is fallen. She has become a home for demons. She is a hideout for every foul spirit, a hideout for every foul vulture, and every foul and dreadful animal. For all the nations have fallen because of the wine of her passionate immorality. The kings of the world have committed adultery with her because of her desires for extravagant luxury. The merchants of the world have grown rich. Then I heard another voice calling from heaven, "Come away from her, my people. Do not take part in her sins, or you will be punished with her. For her sins are piled as high as heaven, and God remembers her evil deeds. Do to her as she had done to others, double her penalty for all her evil deeds. She brewed a cup of terror for others, so brew twice as much for her. She glorified herself and lived in luxury, so match it now with torment and sorrow. She boasted in her heart, 'I am queen on my throne. I am no helpless widow, and I have no reason to mourn.' Therefore these plagues will overtake her in a single day, death and mourning and famine."
Keep going.
I turned the page too far. I had 2 pages together. She will be completely, she will be completely consumed by fire, for the Lord God who judges her is mighty.
So is this the same Babylon as the Babylon in 17? There's differences, there's distinctions, and there's parallels. So is it the same? I think it's the wrong question. I think the right perspective is what we talked about earlier, Satan's 2 great plagues, the lies of false religion or the lies of materialism, both of which will fall, both of which are lies that are going to be exposed, unmasked, and destroyed by God as sin, as he judges the sin that's in them. So both are named as Babylon, the whore of Babylon, and this is the fall of Babylon. But the point for each one is distinct. And this one, we're digging into materialism.
So something that's interesting from the original Greek language is the way that the original Greek is worded. It's as if this has already happened, which is interesting because we have to remember that God knows the end from the beginning. And so he created the beginning in order to accomplish the end.
So why do that? Why do that? Why write that way, that sometimes things are in the future, sometimes things are in the past? Why in this case is the Greek syntax put together in grammar such that it's like it's already happened? Because it's a sure thing, right? That was a written technique at the time of, this is a foregone conclusion. You can write, you can take it to the bank. That was a really poor choice of words. But, this is so sure, we can write it as if it's in the past, even though it hasn't happened yet.
And I think that's really important, and I think that would have been something that the early church would have latched on to, would have seen, and would have understood, because they would know that this is for sure, absolutely, 100% going to happen. It's going to happen so much that it's already happened, if you can wrap your brains around that one. The angel proclaims that man-centered or self-centered society has fallen because all the nations became unfaithful to God, which is depicted metaphorically in this case as societies drinking the wine of Babylon's immorality. And as a result of this very wicked activity, the merchants of the earth are said to have grown wealthy. So they took advantage. Who were they focused on? Self?
Themselves.
What were they focused on doing? Amassing wealth. So that's what they were intent on. And we're going to get into a little bit of this in just a little bit. That was terrible English. We're going to get into this a little bit because this almost seems like wealth is in and of itself inherently evil. But remember that in this case, how did they get wealth? Because they aligned with idolatry, secularism, worldliness, materialism. Okay, so God's people are called to withdraw from worldly living in order to avoid judgment to come. And in delivering that warning, a voice from heaven refers to Babylon's sins as being piled up, triggering God's remembrance. And the thing that this draws our attention back to, the visual that we start to see here, where was it that we, as man, tried to build up to heaven? Tower of Babel, right? Yeah. And in this case, that just like the Tower of Babel pointed to the pride of man, all of these sins also pile up and point to the pride of man. It says God will delay judgment at times for sins. This is hard for us. God's going to delay judgment for the wicked at times. Is his justice sometimes swift? Yep. Is his justice sometimes slow? Yep. Will we sometimes not see his justice? Yes. Do we trust that his justice is always perfect? Yes.
Well, we should anyway.
We should. But what I really want us to understand here is when judgment comes, no sin is going to be passed over. All will receive judgment. There are the members of the secular godless society within the Antichrist's kingdom, and they're sentenced to a double portion of judgment for their sin. Why? Why would they get a double portion? They led people astray. Yep. They killed the saints, then rejoiced over it. Yep. Yeah, Sean, bless you.
Bless you.
I'm just gonna guess here, maybe because you're so far into the end time revelation that rebellion was a more willful rebellion,
Ah.
more knowing rebellion against God.
How many angels have we had proclaiming God? Angels, like not people, not situations.
We had them too, but
We had them too. We had cataclysmic events. We had angels surrounding the world, declaring Christ, declaring salvation, declaring God's glory and holiness. This is willful rebellion. So they will receive a double portion of judgment for their sin. Self-centeredness under the beast's rule. The society metaphorically called Babylon glorified herself, right? She said, I am the queen. I sit on the throne. I am no widow, and I don't need to mourn. It's a brazen rejection of God. It is willful disobedience. And not just willful disobedience. It is willful disobedience over and over and over and over and over and over. We say it often, we need to remember it. These are people who have been given so many opportunities, and their hearts are just too hardened. They are too focused on self. They think through themselves, through their works, through their wealth, through their political power, through their station and their standing, and through their pride. They are better than God. And she's calling it out right there. I am my own destiny. I am my own God. If it feels good, go ahead and do it. Because it's about self, and it's not about Christ.
Okay, Revelation 18, 9 and 10. And the kings of the world who committed adultery with her and enjoyed her great luxury will mourn for her as they see the smoke rising from her charred remains. They will stand at a distance, terrified by her great torment, and they will cry out, how terrible for you, O Babylon, you great city. In a single moment, God's judgment came on you.
And I wanted to pause here for just a second because I'm trying to encapsulate here the different groups that are being affected, that are being called out. And this one is particularly the political leaders will mourn because they see their power and their luxury taken away. Okay, go to the next one.
The merchants of the world will weep and mourn for her, for there is no one left to buy their goods. She bought great quantities of gold, silver, jewels, and pearls, fine linen, purple, silk, and scarlet cloth, things made of fragrant thyine wood, ivory goods, and objects made of expensive wood, and bronze, iron, and marble. She also bought cinnamon, spice, incense, myrrh, frankincense, wine, olive oil, fine flour, wheat, cattle, sheep, horses, wagons, and bodies, that is, human slaves. The fancy things you loved so much are gone, they cry. All your luxuries and splendor are gone forever, never to be yours again.
And at this point, we're talking about the merchants, and they mourn because they saw prosperity. Remember, we talked about this from the very beginning. When the Antichrist comes, it's going to be bringing peace to the world, prosperity to the world. And now, all those promises, all those false promises, they see them as false, and they mourn that they no longer have the things that they believed in. Why? They believed in stuff. They believed in religion. They did not have relationship. And so they're going to experience the removal of their goods, those things that they held so tightly to and found security, safety, and promise in, the things they prized above all.
The merchants who became wealthy by selling her these things will stand at a distance, terrified by her great torment. They will weep and cry out, how terrible for that great city. She was clothed in finest purple and scarlet linens, decked out with gold and precious stones and pearls. In a single moment, all the wealth of the city is gone. And all the captains of the merchant ships and their passengers and sailors and crews will stand at a distance. Still going?
Yep.
They will cry out as they watch the smoke ascend, and they will say, "Where is there another city as great as this?" And they will weep and throw dust on their heads to show their grief. And they will cry out, how terrible for that great city. The ship owners became wealthy by transporting her great wealth on the seas. In a single moment, all is gone. Rejoice over her fate, O heavens, and people of God and apostles and prophets, for at last God has judged her for your sakes.
And so at this point, as judgment comes, they experience fear. And they realize it's all coming to an end. And it's coming to an end quickly. But not everybody is unhappy. The heavenly voices call for rejoicing because God has avenged the saints, the apostles, and the prophets. And then 21 through 24.
Then a mighty angel picked up a boulder the size of a huge millstone. He threw it into the ocean and shouted, "Just like this, the great city of Babylon will be thrown down with violence and will never be found again. The sound of harps, singers, flutes, and trumpets will never be heard in you again. No craftsmen and no trades will ever be found in you again. The sound of the mill will never be heard in you again. The light of a lamp will never shine in you again. The happy voices of brides and grooms will never be heard in you again. For your merchants were the greatest in the world, and you deceived the nations with your sorceries. In your streets flowed the blood of the prophets and God's holy people, and the blood of people slaughtered all over the world."
Imagine that. Imagine a place where there is no music, where there is no goodness, where there is no life, there is no beauty. It's an absence of God. It's the absence of God. And it's the absence of God, not just we are doing it ourselves, we're going to, think that everything's okay, we're going to put our trust in the things of this world and not of God. This is the true removal of God. When God is removed, what are the good things? The good things are from God. There are no more good things. Judgment of the Antichrist's realm will be swift. There are going to be many, 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 many warnings. Many displays of God's patience. We talked about that so much. God is so patient. He's so patient with us. He's so patient with humanity. He wants us to have a relationship. Yet when judgment finally falls, those who have embraced worldliness, immorality, godlessness, and idolatry, they will weep and mourn because they still don't understand. The things they put their trust in are gone, and it's going to feel really quick. There are several groups that are called out in this section, each with their own reason to weep and mourn. The kings, the political leaders, the merchants of the earth who buy and sell goods, and those who transport those items. And they were all made wealthy through the political and economic system of the time. This is a condemnation of the amassing of wealth. And here's what I want you to hear: at the expense of worship. This is the amassing of wealth at the expense of worship to the one true King. So I talked about it. I said I was going to refer to it, and I was going to talk about it a little bit more because it sounds like wealth is evil and all of that. You know there are actually really wealthy, God-honoring people in the Bible? Abraham actually was quite wealthy. Very wealthy, right? Joseph, very wealthy.
Job.
Job.
There were some cycles there, but in the end, he was very wealthy.
Solomon. King Solomon, the wealthiest of all, the one who sought wisdom. Scripture says that great wealth was a gift and a reward from God to Solomon. So when the Lord condemns a person being controlled by wealth, it's not because wealth is inherently evil. In the case of Babylon, wealth led to self-centeredness and denial of God. So what are we supposed to do? We need to express our gratitude for the blessings that we receive from God. Was everybody asked to get rid of their possessions to be able to follow Christ and all their wealth? No. But one person was, and he couldn't do it. Why? Because wealth was more important than worship. There is nothing inherently bad with wealth. And I believe that God blesses with financial blessings. And sometimes he blesses with people, with relationships, with restoration. There's nothing inherently evil about wealth, except when it comes at the expense of worship. So I want you to notice something. And it took me a long time to really think about this and notice this. The people that were in this kingdom, for this kingdom of the Antichrist, they wept and mourned over the loss of their possessions, their standing, their power. They didn't weep over the people that were killed. They didn't weep over the loss of life. They wept over stuff. That is a powerful image. They didn't weep over the loss of life. They wept over the livelihood that they lost. And I got to also point out that not only will the destruction of godless secular society be severe, but here's the good news, it will be final. It will be final. And that's depicted here by this mighty angel. And he picks up a millstone, and a millstone would have been a couple tons. Many, many thousands of pounds. And he throws it into the sea. And he declares that Babylon, idolatry, worldliness, secularism, materialism, false religion, will be thrown down and never be found again. That is huge. So then the angel concludes by naming the most serious sin of Babylon: shedding the blood of innocent prophets, saints, and God's holy people. Not surprisingly, worship of the wrong object, wealth in this case, is accompanied by wrath misdirected at an improper target. Christians. I'm going to say that one more time. Worship of the wrong object is accompanied by wrath misdirected at an improper target. We must be careful that what we worship is only the Lord.
So if Revelation chapter 18 is the judgment on secularism, and the one topic that was preached as a warning by Jesus more than any other was about money, how is it that wealth is not inherently evil? This is another one of those antinomies, two apparent things in contradiction. And how do we reconcile that? What is the healthy relationship? What's the appropriate God-honoring relationship with money, with wealth? A few years ago, I had a really, really interesting experience where the Holy Spirit took over. It was one of those things. I know I'm watching the time too.
Yeah.
We had to do a fuel delivery down into California, and at the time I was driving with a new driver. I liked him. His name was Brian. But I couldn't drive the truck, and he couldn't run the pump on the truck. But I could run the pump, and he could drive the truck. So I grabbed the book that I was reading at the time and jumped in the truck in the passenger side, and we get on Highway 50, and we're headed into California to go do this fuel delivery. And after about an hour, he goes, enough. You can't just sit there in silence for this entire trip. I'm going to be with you all day. Let's talk. And I said, but I'm reading. I want to read this book. I was reading Francis Chan's Crazy Love. And he goes, fine, read me the book. So I started reading, where I jumped right into the middle on Crazy Love, Francis Chan's Crazy Love. And it was example after example after example of people out of conviction by God giving sacrificially of their wealth to those who were poor. And after about the third example, Brian is just vibrating in his seat driving down Highway 50. And I'm, issue, Brian? What's going on? And he goes, okay, when is it enough? What is it? That guy gives his car, gives his surfboat. This other guy gives a house. This guy gives, all of his wealth. God's calling us to give. When is it enough? Is it when we have nothing? When is it enough? I don't know. I wasn't sure what the answer was. So I started trying to think about the examples that I knew of in the Bible of people giving. And this is where the Holy Spirit took over, because this wasn't me. I don't know I know where this came from. This was inspiration. I said, okay, well, we have an example. We have an example of Zechariah. No, wait, not Zechariah. The little short dude. Zacchaeus. Zechariah. Zacchaeus.
The little short dude.
The little short dude in the tree. The little short dude in the tree. Right? And what happens with Zacchaeus? I know. Pastor Tony's back there. Give them the microphone. What have
Look
I
what
done?
happens. The short guy.
Zacchaeus, okay. So what do
But
we
I
see
actually
with-
knew who you were talking
Yeah,
about.
well,
That's,
short guy
that's
in
the funny
tree.
part.
So what do we see with Zacchaeus, right? He was a fraudster. He took people's money. He was a tax collector, and yet he wanted to meet Jesus. Jesus calls him down to the tree. Jesus goes and has lunch in his house, much to the chagrin of all the Jewish leaders,
upstanding
and
Jewish
the good,
people.
upstanding Jewish people, and has a conversation with Zacchaeus, and Zacchaeus declares, "I'm going to pay back everything that I took, and anyone I wronged, I'm going to pay him back 4 times. He was rich. He had the money to do it. And what does Jesus say? Salvation has come to this house today. Okay? That's an extravagant gift. Okay? Next example. The rich young ruler goes to Jesus. Says, Jesus, I have followed all the rules since the age of accountability. I do this, I do that, I tithe, I give. What else do I need to do to attain the kingdom of heaven? Interestingly, he knew he didn't have it. And Jesus said, it's easy. Give everything you own to the poor and come and follow me. And the rich young ruler went away saddened because he was very rich. The price was too high, right? For him, it was everything. For him, it was everything. And it was a price he wasn't willing to pay. Okay? Third one. Let me do the third one, and then I'm going to, okay. The third one that hit me, and this is the one that clinched it for me. Jesus is in the temple with his followers, and the people are bringing their offerings, and the rich people are giving richly. And there's a little old poor lady who comes and gives a few copper coins. And Jesus goes, come here, look at this. Look at what she's given. She gave everything she had. So to answer Brian's question in the truck, how much is enough? What are we going to say, Denise?
Well, it made me think of Mary who washed his feet with her hair.
Mm-hmm.
All she had was that little jar of perfume, and it was precious to her and very expensive, and probably something passed down. So very expensive, but she felt that it was more important to wash his feet with it than to save it for future. So that's the one that came to my mind, was that it's I think it's not so much how much it is, but what it came from. So it was her heart that
Bingo.
gave the money. So it was her belief that he deserved this, that he is my God, and that offering of I am a servant to you, God. And she did it with the most expensive thing that she had. It was about what it came from.
Excellent, good. I want to come back to that. Sean, what were you going to say?
Expanding on what she said, I think the short answer is, there isn't enough good, it's always.
Wait. Say that again. Say it again. For the recording, when is it enough?
It's not enough.
It's not enough.
It's all.
It's all of it.
I think the right answer is, while you may not always be called upon to give all of it, when called upon to do so, you should be willing to part with all of it, because none of it is yours anyway.
Okay, and that's why I keyed on those three examples. Okay, that's why I keyed on the rich young ruler who was called on to give everything and he couldn't, and there was the widow who gave everything and it was enough. And so obviously it's not about the amount of money, right? Because the rich young ruler, everything he had was tons, and the widow, everything she had was pennies, right? So obviously it's not the dollar value that matters to God.
And for
yet-
Zacchaeus,
And for Zacchaeus,
it wasn't everything.
It wasn't everything. So what is significant about the amount? The thing that's significant about the amount is that it shows that your heart is in the right place. It's not about the amount, it's about your priorities and what you're doing with it. It shows that you have surrendered to God, that you recognize that everything that you have is a blessing and comes from Him, and that you want to use it to honor Him, glorify Him, and you want to leverage what He's blessed you with in order to bless others. Why? So that others can come into saving relationship with Him. And so that's the key. And so that's also why I like Denise's example, is it wasn't money. I didn't go there. And there are a number of examples very similar to that, but I didn't go there because it wasn't directly money. And I was picking the three examples that were directly money, okay? Where the widow's mite, the rich young ruler, and Zacchaeus, because it shows the heart. But you're absolutely right. The example with the alabaster nard, why do I remember that? And I can't remember Zacchaeus. Whatever.
Little short dude.
The short dude.
Forever and always in this church, it will be the little short dude in the
short
tree.
dude in the tree. Okay, and it's because it shows the position of your heart. So, is wealth inherently evil? No. But the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And the caution, how are we doing on time? The caution to us in the West, are you rich? What? You said everybody is. Most people are. Are you rich? Okay. Do you mean everybody in the world is rich? What do you mean? Everybody in the West is rich. You asked about the West. Okay. So is everybody rich in the West? Yes. That's perspective. Even people who are like, oh, I'm so poor, I can't pay my bills. Those people are rich. Compared to what? Compared to history? Compared to the vast numbers of populations in the world. You guys know what you could do either one. You could do median or you could do mean, and it changes the number a little bit. But what the most people in the world, do you know what the dollar equivalent value of what they earn in a day is? It's come up a little bit recently. Do you guys know what it is? Throw a number. 10 what? Dollars per $10 per week, okay? So that's about right. For a while, it was about $1 a day. Now it's come up a little bit. It's a little bit less than $2 a day. So it's about $10 a week, okay? Now, we worked for a number of years in southern Mexico, in Oaxaca, and I was floored to learn that an average day laborer's wages was somewhere between 100 and 200 pesos a day. What's that in dollars? At the time, divide by somewhere like by 15 or 20. So that was the equivalent of somewhere between $10 and $15 a day. I was like, $10 to $15 a day? That's even high compared to the rest of the world. And we consider that to be incredible poverty. And in fact, in southern Mexico, that actually is incredibly poor. Many of the day laborers down there are very, very, very poor. And so, from our perspective, if you fall below a certain income in the U.S., you get federal aid to bring you up to a baseline. What's that baseline? Isn't it like $16,500 a year? or something like that. It might be up to $18,000 a year. $18,000 a year from the perspective of the rest of the population of the world, that is extravagant wealth. What does that mean? You don't have to worry about food. You don't have to worry about freezing to death. You don't have to worry about clean water. You don't have to worry about health care, being sick. The things that are available to even the poorest in the West is extravagant riches by the standards of the rest of the world. Okay, so I've waxed philosophical long enough on that. We can say,
I was remembering a comment my coworker once made that our country is so vastly wealthy that even our poor and homeless are overweight.
and have cell phones.
Yep.
Yeah,
And have cell
even
phones.
our poorest are overweight. Even our poor and homeless are overweight. The poorest of the poor in this country are overweight. That's shocking. So, when it comes to wealth, when it comes to money, the two-pronged caution, the double-edged sword of the caution in this case is it's not about the amount, it's about the relationship and the priority. It's about the heart. Okay? So are you using that which you have been blessed with for God's purposes? Because as long as you are, the amounts don't matter. It's about the heart.
What did the truck driver say about that?
Oh, Brian. His entire family now attends Life Point. What did you say in the moment? I think he was pissed at me for a couple hours. But, Brian, his name is Brian Murphy. Some of you may know him. He's at Life Point. I worked with him at Bentley for like 10 years. And he and his entire family all attend Life Point and are followers of Christ.
I thought maybe he's gonna tell you to go back into silent mode.
Wait, reading me that book from Francis Chan. Yeah. All right.
Okay, let's wrap this up. I wanted to call attention to something. The list at the end of chapter 18, verses 22 and 23, is a profound summary of the effects that people's selfishness and rejection of God have on society and on their souls. The music stops. The joy of living vanishes. And Denise is back there going,
It's a good thing you'll be in heaven. Well, they'll be playing harps. Yeah.
the joy of living vanishes when self-indulgence becomes our life philosophy. Real joy comes in reaching out to others. Productive work stops. Sorry, that's our dog. When we lose sight of, she probably heard my
She
voice.
can hear us.
When we lose sight of our goal of working to honor Christ, significant work ceases. Not that work ceases, but the significance is gone from our hearts. Family life breaks down. Godly families provide the role models of Christ for our children. The lights go out. When people continually choose the darkness of immorality, their sinfulness brings darkness on a society and on their souls. And then the voice of the bridegroom and the bride are silent. Marriages have little hope when selfishness reigns. What description on this list resonates with you? And so that's what I want you to think about for this week. On that list, what resonates with you? And then go to God. Go to God with it, with confession, with a desire for his help, with intercession for another. Whatever's most appropriate, then listen for and receive his assurance, his comfort, and his encouragement. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, as always, we end in gratitude that we know your desire for us is not that we end up here. Your patience with us is so vast, Lord. But I pray for us tonight. I pray for us that we would put our worship where it belongs. That we would put our worship for you, God. We would put our worship in the things that are holy of you. help remind us that there is a whole world out there who's worshiping the wrong thing. And as we talked about tonight, God, you have called each of us to share your gospel message. And I pray this week as we go through that list and we pray about the things that you have convicted our hearts with, that we would be able to come to you, confess that, and that you would give us comfort and peace, Lord, and that we would repent, God. Not just confess it to you, but that we would turn away, that we would choose your path and not our own, that we would sacrifice pride for the worship of you. We love you so much, God. We thank you for your word and all of the reminders that it brings for us. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Ask Ray what he wants you to do.